This is over 1 hour of obscure Jujutsu Kaisen theories and lore. We create the weakest character in JJK ever. Spoiler, he's literally so cooked. We also theorize what devil fruits some JJK characters would have. I'll give you a clue. Gojo and Law are low-key the same. Then there's every character who has used the same technique. Surprisingly, there are about 15 different techniques used by more than one person. And so much more. So let's begin with...
Today, I will create the weakest character in Jujutsu Kaisen. I'll do this by going through a bunch of characters and choosing the worst one in each of these 10 categories. Then I'll combine the worst traits of all of them to create the absolute most cooked character that could ever exist in the JJK universe. Alright, so the weakest character would clearly need the worst curse technique in the show. And trust me, there are quite a few candidates. For example, Haruta Shigemo's technique Miracle stores tiny lucky moments from his day, like glancing at a clock and seeing 11:11, and converts them into automatic protection against fatal attacks. That sounds okay on paper until you realize it has zero offensive ability. It's completely passive, and the moment Nanami showed up, one punch used up a miracle, and that was basically the whole fight. A technique that saves you from dying but can't help you actually win anything is already pretty bad. But then there's Momo's tool manipulation. She can fly on a broom and fire gusts of wind. She's basically a Halloween decoration that somehow enrolled in a school for sorcerers. But even so, both of those at least do something. What I really need for the weakest character is a technique that is useless in every single situation, against every single opponent, at every single moment it has ever been used. And that brings us to Remy. Remy's curse technique is called Scorpion Hair. Her hair moves independently like a scorpion's tail and tries to sting opponents. That's pretty much it. Now look, on paper, hair coming to life and attacking you sounds kind of threatening, but the problem is Remy used this technique against Megumi, and his response was to look mildly irritated. She didn't even break his stride, and that's on Megumi. Imagine trying that with someone like Sukuna. Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. The Scorpion Hair technique is perfect for our character. 1 category down, 9 more to go. And let's continue by choosing which domain expansion we will use for our character. I know you might be asking, why are we even giving our character a domain expansion? It's literally the pinnacle of all Jujutsu, something reserved for strong fighters. Well, because having a terrible domain expansion is somehow more embarrassing than not having one. Now, when we look at the weakest domain expansions that have actually been shown in the series, most of them are still pretty terrifying by normal standards. Jogo's Coffin of the Iron Mountain turns the entire barrier into the inside of an active volcano. Yeah, it got destroyed by Gojo, but against anyone who isn't literally the strongest sorcerer alive, it would be devastating. Dagon's domain summons an infinite swarm of Shikigami in an ocean environment. That took the combined effort of Nanami, Naobito, Maki, and Megumi just to survive, and even then they were losing until Toji showed up. But then there's the Smallpox Deity's domain, and this one is genuinely the weakest domain expansion we've seen used in the series. This special grade curse uses a domain that works by trapping the target inside a coffin, and if they don't escape within 3 seconds, a giant boulder crushes them. This domain's entire threat is, get in the box or the rock falls on you. And even that, the whole setup, got completely neutralized by Mei Mei because her bird strike technique just happened to be a direct counter. She beat it without breaking much of a sweat. And with the IQ our character is about to have, I promise this domain would be even worse in his hands. Okay, our character is already pretty weak, but he can still probably win a fight, so we need to make him even worse by choosing the slowest character for speed. Speed in JJK is everything. Like, this isn't a show where you can afford to be slow. Toji Fushiguro, a man with literally zero cursed energy, was moving fast enough to give teenage Gojo the hardest fight of his life purely on physical speed and technique. Speed in this world is the difference between alive and not. So for our character, we obviously need the slowest person possible. And when you start looking at who moves the worst in this show, a few names come up. You could look at Kechizu, one of the death painting wombs. He was the least capable of the 3 brothers, had no real mobility, and basically just sat there being grotesque while Eso did all the actual fighting. When Nobara's resonance hit both of them at once, Kechizu went down first and fastest because he had nothing to offer in terms of movement or evasion. But the character whose speed, or complete lack of it, is most documented and most embarrassing has to be Momo. Now I know what you're thinking, Momo can fly. How is she slow? And yes, on a broomstick she has aerial mobility. But here's the thing, the only reason Momo survived her fight with Nobara during the Goodwill event was because she stayed in the air the whole time and refused to come down. The moment she was was on the ground, she was useless. She's not fast at all. Momo's ground speed for our character is perfect. Remember when I said our character's IQ is going to be bad? Well, it's going to be really bad. JJK has some absolutely spectacular examples of terrible decision-making. You could go with Jogo as an obvious first pick. This guy challenged Satoru Gojo to a fight, the man who had been called the strongest since the day he was born. Jogo pulled up, said, "I think I can win this," and proceeded to get his domain destroyed and his body shattered within the span of a single conversation. And then, because that apparently wasn't enough of a lesson, he later decided to fight Sukuna and got vaporized by a divine arrow. You genuinely cannot write this. But Jogo at least had conviction. There's a certain tragic logic to it, even if the execution was a catastrophe. For pure, nobody can argue with its stupidity, it has to be Haruta. This man openly admits, out loud with his whole chest, that he only targets weak people. That's pretty pathetic if you ask me. He built his entire career around finding people who cannot fight back and attacking only them. During Shibuya, he was roaming around finishing off already injured sorcerers and non-combatants because that's the only level of opponent he can handle. Then Nanami found him and absolutely punished him for it. And the thing that makes Haruta the perfect pick for this category isn't just that he's weak, it's that he genuinely doesn't seem to understand why. He literally doesn't even know what his technique is. Talk about dumb. So we'll take his IQ for our character. Moving on. Personality matters a lot for our character because it determines how they act under pressure, what decisions they make in a fight, and whether they'll do anything smart when things go wrong. For the weakest possible character, we need the worst possible personality. Now, there are a lot of bad personalities in this show. Naoya Zenin is one of the most genuinely unpleasant people in the entire series. Arrogant, misogynistic, treats everyone around him like they're beneath him, and somehow still acts surprised when Maki eventually makes him regret every single one of those choices. But for our character, I want something even more terrible. I want the personality that gets you killed the fastest in the JJK verse. And that personality belongs to Jogo. It's not just that he's arrogant, it's that his arrogance is completely disconnected from reality. He was told by Kenjaku himself that his strength was somewhere around 8 or 9 fingers of Sukuna's power. 8 or 9 fingers out of 20. That means Kenjaku was literally telling him to his face that he was less than half as strong as Sukuna. And Jogo's brain processed that information and came out the other side thinking, yeah, I can probably fight him. That is a specific kind of delusion that cannot be taught. Just imagine our character being as confident as Jogo with a technique like scorpion hair. Yeah, he's cooked. There are still 5 more categories left to choose from, so let's continue with Cursed Energy. Cursed Energy is everything in this show. It powers your technique, reinforces your body, and determines your ceiling as a sorcerer. Run dry in a fight and you're done. So naturally, our character needs as little of it as possible. And we actually have 2 characters. Toji and Maki both have literally 0 cursed energy. So which one should we pick for our character? Well, it's actually obvious if you think about it. It has to be Maki Zenin. The reason why I say this is because before she got her whole awakening, she actually had so little cursed energy that she couldn't even see cursed spirits and needed special glasses for it. Now, it probably doesn't make a difference if we pick Toji, Mai, or Maki. They're all so low in the cursed energy pool, but I'm gonna go with Maki. Imagine having a domain expansion, a cursed technique, and still not being able to use these 2 abilities at all. Plus, you need special glasses to see cursed spirits. Yep, our character is beyond pathetic. Physical strength in JJK splits into 2 things. Cursed energy reinforcement, which turns sorcerers superhuman, and raw physical ability, which is its own thing entirely. For our character, we obviously need both to be terrible. Now, there are a bunch of candidates here. Miwa has almost no physical strength. Junpei was completely untrained and relied entirely on his technique. Several of the lower-ranked curse users we see throughout the series are physically unremarkable, but the character with the most proven weak physical output in the entire show is Kechizu. Of all the death painting womb siblings, Kechizu was the least capable in every single way. He couldn't think for himself. He needed Esso to function. His rot technique looked dangerous, but Nobara found the counter almost immediately, and when both brothers got hit by her resonance at the same time, Kechizu went down first. More than that, Kechizu was so physically weak that he basically existed as a liability for Esso. So we'll take Kechizu's physical strength for our character. At this point, you might be wondering how weak can this character get? Well, let's talk about his weapon. This might be my favorite category because the weapons in JJK range from completely legendary to genuinely hilarious, and I love the whole spectrum. On the legendary side, you've got the Inverted Spear of Heaven, a special grade curse tool tool that nullifies any curse technique it touches. Gojo's infinity got cut straight through by this thing. Toji paired it with the chain of 1,000 miles and was fighting the strongest sorcerer alive with what was basically an unkillable combination. And then there is Nanako Curse Tool, which is a lime green cell phone. Nanako's technique lets her manipulate any image she takes with this phone, which in her hands is actually a legitimate cursed ability. Now for our character, the phone is even worse. Because our character doesn't have Nanako's technique, they just have the phone. Just imagine this guy pulling out a phone to swing at his opponents. They'd probably burst out laughing. Nanako's phone as our weapon is perfect. Now this category doesn't really matter this much, but we'll do it anyway. Cursed spirits are born from negative energy, and some of them are practically invincible to conventional attacks. Cursed corpses like Panda have enhanced bodies and unique structural properties that give them advantages in specific situations. Humans have the widest range of development, but also the most limitations. So which species is the absolute worst pick for our character? You might think cursed spirits are the obvious answer since they can be exercised with cursed energy and are fundamentally made of negative emotion. But even the weakest cursed spirits have some supernatural properties. The worst species is actually just a plain human sorcerer. Combine this with all the traits we've already given our character, and he is definitely, utterly beyond cooked. Last category. Durability in JJK means how much punishment you can absorb before you go down. And when you look at the fragile end of the spectrum in this show, things get genuinely alarming very quickly. You could make a case for Junpei. Went down quickly once Mahito stopped pretending to be his friend. But for the single most horrible durability in Jujutsu Kaisen, there is only one real answer. Kokichi. The real Kokichi was a person whose heavenly restriction had left his body so fragile that he lived permanently submerged in a bathtub of medicinal water. He couldn't move at all. Parts of his skin were hollow. He has bandages all around him, dried skin, scars, and every other awful thing you can think of. It's pretty sad, really, but perfect for our character. And it gets even worse because at least Kokichi had enormous cursed energy output to compensate. Our character doesn't even have that. They have Maki's cursed energy output, which means they can't reinforce their body at all. Kokichi's durability for our character is the final piece to creating the weakest, most cooked character in Jujutsu Kaisen.
Okay, that character was literally so cooked. But that's just one of the many insane theories and lore we have to show you. Like what Devil Fruit Sukuna and Gojo would have. Stay tuned. There are hundreds of curse techniques in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, but did you know that there are actually 15 of them that have been used by more than one person? And I'm willing to bet that most of you don't know all of them. Like, did you know Nobara's grandmother uses the exact same technique as her? Or that Maki and Yuta's granddaughter inherited Megami's 10 Shadows technique? So today we're covering every single case in JJK where 2 or more characters share the same curse technique. Alright, we're starting with one of the coolest techniques in the show, projection sorcery. This technique, which from what we've seen has been passed down in the Zenin clan, takes a single second and divides it into 24 frames of animation, like a film reel. And if you touch someone with your palm while the technique is active, they have to follow the same rules or risk getting frozen. The result? The user looks like they're literally teleporting. Pretty sick, right? That's Naobito Zenin's technique, and he used it to become known as the fastest Jujutsu sorcerer alive, second only to Gojo himself. But then his son Naoya also inherited this technique, and he really showed us how cool and broken this technique is. Unlike his father, who was more measured and strategic with this technique, Naoya was explosive. He started experimenting with stacking the technique on top of itself, building acceleration across consecutive frames. He was pushing towards speeds that even Naobito never reached. We saw this in his fight against a newly awakened Maki Zenin, and honestly, Naoya was genuinely terrifying in that fight. Even after death and becoming a cursed spirit, Naoya kept using projection sorcery, and as a cursed spirit, the technique evolved. His movements became even more erratic and unpredictable, removing the biological limits his human body had placed on him. The construction technique. The idea behind construction is deceptively simple. The user creates something from nothing, pouring cursed energy into creation and conjuring real, tangible objects out of thin air. Unlike things made inside a domain, whatever you create with construction doesn't disappear when the technique ends. But the problem is, it devours cursed energy at a brutal rate. And that's exactly what made construction so tragic in Mai Zenin's hands. See, Mai Mai and her twin sister Maki were born with a heavenly restriction, which handicapped both sisters. Maki got no technique and almost no cursed energy, but an unbreakable body. Mai got the technique, but almost no cursed energy to actually run it properly. So what could Mai do with construction? 1 bullet a day. But it was such a tiny sliver of what construction could actually do. The last time she used construction was to create the soul-splitting katana for Maki, which made Maki really powerful, but it did kill her in the process. Now flip to Yorozu, an ancient Heian-era sorcerer. She used this technique to create liquid metal that could restructure itself on command, and eventually built herself an entire set of insect-inspired armor from it. Yorozu's construction had basically no ceiling because she had the cursed energy to actually run it properly. She used this to fight Sukuna, and pushed him into summoning Maharaga just to deal with her. There are still 13 techniques and their users left to cover. And let's continue with the straw doll technique. A hammer, nails, and a straw doll. How scary can that really be? Pretty scary, it turns out. The technique has 2 main applications. First, there's hairpin. Nobara infuses nails with cursed energy and detonates them remotely, creating explosive blasts at any range. But then there's resonance. As long as Nobara has a physical piece of her target, she can connect that piece to her straw doll and use the doll as a proxy. Whatever she does to the doll happens to the target. Now, Nobara wasn't the only one with this technique. She inherited the straw doll technique directly from her grandmother. She's the one who taught Nobara how to use it, trained her for years in their hometown. In fact, the reason Nobara even entered Jujutsu High was because of her grandmother's recommendation. We don't see much of her grandmother in action, but the foundation Nobara built everything on came from her. However, Nobara is not the only one who inherited a technique from a family member. You see, Gojo's Limitless technique is the signature ability of the Gojo clan, one of the big 3 sorcerer families. There's no need to explain what it does. I'm pretty sure we've all seen countless videos on how broken Gojo is. Satoru Gojo is the first person in 400 years to be born with both the Limitless and the 6 eyes simultaneously. But before him, there was an ancestor of the Gojo clan who also had both. Gojo himself mentioned this. Sometime in the Edo or Keicho period, the head of the Gojo clan, carrying both the Limitless and the 6 eyes, got into a confrontation with the head of the Zenin clan, who had the 10 Shadows technique, and the 2 of them killed each other. That ancestor's name is never revealed, but the fact that someone wielded Limitless to a level that required Maharaga to fight them to a draw mean he's super strong. Yuta also used it when he took over Gojo's body, but we'll talk about that more later. Speaking of the Gojo clan ancestor's counterpart, let's talk about the 10 Shadows technique and its 3, technically 4, known users. The 10 Shadows technique uses shadows as a medium and allows the user to summon up to 10 different Shikigami. The one Shikigami in the 10 shadows that cannot be tamed, Maharaga. Every user of this technique who has ever tried to subjugate Maharaga has died, except for Sukuna, but we don't count him. Maharaga has the ability to adapt to any phenomenon it encounters, which means over time, nothing can hurt it. Megumi Fushiguro inherited the 10 Shadows technique from his ancestry, and despite never completing his Shikigami collection, he was already being compared to the very best. And then Sukuna hijacked his body and used the 10 Shadows to its absolute maximum. Then there's 𝑦𝒂𝒆𝒄𝒐𝒆 from Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. Granddaughter of Maki and Yuta, she also inherited the 10 Shadows technique, and uses it in a restricted form, only accessing certain Shikigami in combat. But she was bold enough to open with Maharaga in her duel against an alien sorcerer. And finally, back at the beginning of everything, there was an unnamed ancient Zenin clan head who used the 10 Shadows technique against that Gojo ancestor we mentioned. There are exactly 10 techniques and their users left to cover, and the last one is definitely my favorite. Blood manipulation is the hereditary technique of the Kamo clan, one of the big 3 sorcerer families. The user can basically control every aspect of their blood, kinda like a bloodbender. Noritoshi Kamo is the current heir of the technique. He can guide his arrows mid-flight using blood threads. But then there's Choso, half human, half cursed spirit, one of the 9 death-painting wombs, and Noritoshi Kamo's technique runs through his veins too, because of the specific, horrific circumstances of how the death paintings were created. Choso is pretty much the better version of Noritoshi, because as the death painting, he can convert his cursed energy directly into blood, meaning he never runs out. And then there's Yuji. Yuji consumed death painting wombs numbers 4 through 9 in preparation for the final battle against Sukuna, and in doing so, he had blood manipulation engraved onto his body. Choso and Noritoshi both trained him in the month before the Shinjuku showdown, making him capable of using piercing blood to actually damage Sukuna. Decades later, Yuji mastered it to the point where he could fire multiple homing blasts simultaneously and clear an entire building in a single shot. shot. Okay, so here's one that the fandom absolutely lost their minds over when it was confirmed. And for good reason. Shrine is the technique of the King of Curses. It produces two types of slashing attacks. Dismantle, a long-range invisible slash that can cut through practically anything, and Cleave, a close-range slash that adjusts its output to optimally damage whatever it touches. Together, these make Sukuna the most dangerous close to mid-range fighter in the series. When Yuji awakened during the Shinjuku Showdown, after landing a sequence of black flashes that surpassed even his own previous record, he manifested Shrine. A weakened version, sure, but unmistakably the same technique. This was only possible because he shared a body with Sukuna for so long that the technique got engraved into Yuji's body the same way blood manipulation did. Rot technique. 𝒂𝒄𝒐𝒆𝒄 and 𝑩𝒆𝒄𝒐𝒎𝒆 are two of the 9 cursed womb death paintings, and the Rot technique is their shared power. Their blood is dark, corrosive, and poisonous. It eats through skin on contact, and if their blood gets into your body through a wound or a membrane, decay activates. A technique that spreads a floral pattern across the target and slowly decomposes them from the inside out. The thing about 𝒂𝒄𝒐𝒆𝒄 and 𝑩𝒆𝒄𝒐𝒎𝒄 is that their connection is both a blessing and a curse. The decay technique affects everyone linked to their blood simultaneously. So when Nobara stabbed herself to run resonance through her own poisoned body back to them, it hit both brothers at once through their shared blood connection. Cursed speech is the inherited technique of the Inumaki clan. The user speaks and their words are reinforced with cursed energy, and the listener is compelled to act on those words. However, it does have a weakness. Every time a cursed speech user pushes too hard against a target that's stronger than them, the technique backfires on their own throat. Inumaki, the most well-known user, carries cough syrup everywhere because of this. Then there's Ko Usami from JJK Modulo, who also has the snake eyes and fang seal, the mark of a cursed speech user, inscribed on the back of his hands. But what's different about Usami is he's not actually from the Inumaki clan. Usami activates the technique by covering his mouth with an open palm. He uses it decisively in battle, though the backlash nearly destroys his throat when he tries it against an entity far beyond his level. And then there's Yuta. Yuta Okkotsu copied cursed speech through his own technique, commanding Geto's entire army of cursed spirits to die in one sentence. He even manifested the snake eyes and fangs seal directly on his tongue and cheeks without using a tool. Puppet manipulation Masamichi Yaga, the principal of Tokyo Jujutsu High, has the ability to create cursed corpses, puppets imbued with cursed energy capable of carrying out complex commands. Yaga refined his technique to the point where he could create independent cursed corpses. Panda is the most famous example. The higher-ups considered this ability terrifying, and when the Shibuya incident gave them an excuse, they moved to execute him. Kokichi Muta, better known as 𝒂𝒄𝒐𝒆𝒄, had the same technique. He used it to control remote puppet bodies across Japan through his sickly, barely functional real body. His heavenly restriction took almost everything from his physical form, in exchange for the cursed energy and technique to run puppet manipulation on a massive scale. 𝒂𝒄𝒐𝒆𝒄 ultimately betrayed Jujutsu High under pressure from Kenjaku's group, but not out of malice. He wanted a body that didn't hurt every second of every day, and even after dying, his small communication puppets kept guiding his allies through Shibuya. There are only 5 techniques left, and let's continue with the long list of Kenjaku's stolen techniques. Idol transfiguration. The technique allows the user to directly touch and reshape someone's soul and body. Mahito is the technique's native user. He used idol transfiguration to transfigure hundreds of people during the Shibuya incident, and then he got absorbed. Kenjaku used Geto's technique to pull Mahito into himself after Yuji and Todo exhausted him, and with that absorption, Kenjaku got idol transfiguration too. He didn't waste a moment with it and used it immediately after Shibuya to start the culling game. Anti-gravity system is another one of Kenjaku's stolen techniques. Kaori Itadori, Yuji's mother, had this cursed technique. It allows the user to negate gravity around themselves, effectively letting them float or fly. And through the technique's reversal, they can do the opposite, dramatically increase gravitational pull around them, crushing everything nearby into the ground. Kenjaku specifically chose her body and possessed her, living in her body and giving birth to Yuji through Jin Itadori, and then moving on, taking the anti-gravity system with him. He revealed the anti-gravity system mid-battle against Yuki Tsukumo and Choso. Suguru Geto's cursed spirit manipulation. The user can capture cursed spirits by engulfing them in a ball of cursed energy and then store them, weaponize them, or release them all simultaneously in the technique's maximum output. Uzumaki. Geto spent years collecting cursed spirits, building up an arsenal so vast and diverse that he could go toe-to-toe with almost anyone. Kenjaku later took over Geto's body because he needed cursed spirit manipulation for the culling game. He used cursed spirit manipulation to absorb Mahito after Shibuya, and in his final confrontations before Yuta killed him. Brain transplantation. Kenjaku's original native curse technique is brain transplantation. The ability to remove his brain brain from his current body and transplant it into another, gaining that body's techniques and memories while retaining everything he's accumulated across every previous life. He's done this so many times that the current version of Kenjaku is a layered composite of hundreds of lives. When Yuta Okkotsu killed Kenjaku, Rika consumed his body, and through that consumption, Yuta gained access to Kenjaku's technique through his copy ability. And then, Yuta did the most audacious thing anyone in JJK has ever done. He used brain transplantation to swap into Gojo's corpse, sky manipulation. The innate technique of Takako Uro, a reincarnated Heian-era assassin who served the Fujiwara clan. Sky manipulation treats the sky as a physical, tangible surface. She can distort the space around an incoming attack and redirect it back at the sender. Her signature technique, Thin Icebreaker, shatters the manipulated surface of the sky like breaking thick ice. She was stuck in a four-way deadlock in the Sendai colony, and when Yuta arrived and disrupted the stalemate, their three-way fight became one of the most insane battles in the entire series. Yuta won, of course, and then, through his copy technique, Yuta absorbed sky manipulation and made it his own. He later used it to deflect Ryu Ishigori's attacks, which later helped him win the fight.
Did you ever wonder who the strongest teen in Jujutsu Kaisen is? What about who's the strongest adult? Or even better, who's the strongest character over the age of 1,000? Today, we're picking the strongest character in each of these age groups, ranging from over 1,000 years old to 1. And let's begin with the youngest characters in the show. As you could have probably guessed, there aren't many strong kids in Jujutsu Kaisen, unless you're counting Gojo as a child, which we're not. There really aren't many. But here's where things get interesting, because we need to talk about cursed spirits. You see, cursed spirits don't age as humans do. They're born from accumulated cursed energy and negative emotions. Mahito is actually a really young cursed spirit, maybe only a few months to a year old when we first meet him, which technically could put him in this category. His idol transfiguration is absolutely terrifying because it lets him reshape souls and bodies at will. This power had Nanami and Yuji completely stunned as they struggled to even damage him properly. However, surprisingly, Mahito is not the strongest kid in the show, because there's another entity in the series whose power easily surpasses most others at a young age, and that's Rika Orimoto. Now I know what you're thinking, Rika died as a child, but the cursed spirit that manifested from her death was born at that moment, making her technically very young as a curse, 6 years old or so to be exact. Rika had power that rivaled special grade curses and could go toe-to-toe with anyone. Her raw, cursed energy output was so massive that she could fuel Yuta's techniques indefinitely. Even Geto, who had thousands of curses at his disposal, recognized her as a threat beyond measure. Her appearance alone was enough to make special grade curses hesitate, and her combat capabilities were off the charts. One category down, and trust me, the next ones are going to get even crazier. Let's continue by choosing the strongest teen in the show. This category is absolutely stacked. Here we obviously have all the students from both Tokyo and Kyoto Jujutsu schools, and some of them are absolute monsters. Hikari Kinji is 18 years old, and this guy is insane. His domain expansion gives him pseudo-immortality when he hits a jackpot, with an automatic reverse curse technique that lets him regenerate from nearly anything. Gojo himself said that Hikari, when he's on a roll, could surpass him in power. Now I don't know if that's completely true, but the fact that Gojo even mentioned it is crazy. Todo is also 18, and his Boogie Woogie technique is one of the most versatile abilities in the series. The guy has an insane battle IQ and physical strength that let him fight special grade curses, and he was instrumental in helping Yuji take down Mahito. We also have other stupidly strong characters like Maki, with her heavenly restriction that puts her on par with, or if not stronger than, Toji Zenin himself, and Nobara, who is just the best girl ever. But someone who should be stronger than all of them is Megumi Fushiguro with his 10 Shadows technique. The potential to summon Mahoraga, the divine general that even Sukuna respected, is absolutely ridiculous. However, Megumi's reluctance to push himself and his tendency to summon Mahoraga as a suicide move hold him back from his true potential. So, is there a character in this age range who has actually achieved their potential and can be called the strongest? Well, there are actually two that stand on top as the honored ones. I'm of course talking about Yuta and Yuji. Ironically, they were both main characters. Yuta is literally the second strongest sorcerer in the modern era after Gojo Satoru. At just 17 years old, he has copied countless curse techniques through Rika, has an immeasurable pool of cursed energy that rivals Gojo's output and has mastered the reverse curse technique to the point where he can heal others. And then we have Mr. Left Right Goodnight Yuji Itadori, who by the end of the series and the sequel is actually the strongest sorcerer alive. He can use domain expansion, all his brother's curse techniques like blood manipulation. He has reverse curse technique and even inherited Sukuna's cleave and dismantle. But if we're being completely honest here, Yuta absolutely destroys Yuji by the end of the series, along with everyone else in this category. Yuta soloed Geto's army of curses, fought multiple culling game players and won, and even used Kenjaku's technique to body hop into Gojo's corpse, which shows you the absolute insanity of his capabilities. I don't think there are any doubts about this one. Yuta takes this category easily. I can't wait to show you the strongest 100-year-old or even 1,000-year-old. Let's move on to the 20 to 30 range, where some of the strongest modern sorcerers are. Can you guess who'll win this one? Let's start with mentioning a few adults who might not be strong but are important to Jujutsu society, like Ijichi, who's 27 years old. There are also crazy cool sorcerers like Nanami Kento in this age range. His 7-to-3 ratio technique creates guaranteed weak points, and his tactical mind made him one of the most reliable grade 1 sorcerers. The problem is, he died during Shibuya, so we can't really make him the strongest in this category. Kusakabe Atsuya is 28 years old and is technically the strongest grade 1 sorcerer currently alive. His swordsmanship is refined to perfection, and his simple domain is so advanced that he can use it without a barrier, which is absolutely insane from a technical standpoint. This guy survived the culling game and multiple encounters with disaster curses through pure skill and a little bit of hiding. Suguru died at 27, but at his peak, his curse spirit manipulation gave him access to thousands of curses, including special grades. His maximum Uzumaki could fire concentrated cursed energy that could obliterate city blocks. Even though he lost to Gojo, he was still one of only 4 special grade sorcerers in the modern era. At 29, Mei is another interesting case. Her bird strike technique, while seemingly simple, is incredibly lethal when she uses it properly. She can kamikaze her crows directly into a target's weak point, and the impact can damage even special grade curses. Plus, her physical capabilities and battle sense are top tier for a grade 1 sorcerer. But we're really only buying time here because we all know who the strongest sorcerer in this age range, and matter of fact, the strongest character period is Satoru Gojo. And honestly, this shouldn't even be a competition. The man with the 6 eyes and limitless technique is literally in a class of his own. His infinity makes him untouchable. His unlimited void can overload anyone's brain with infinite information in 0.2 seconds. And his raw cursed energy output lets him fire off multiple hollow purples in a single fight. Gojo soloed the disaster curses at the Shibuya station while protecting hundreds of civilians. He beat Toji Fushiguro after unlocking reverse curse technique. He went toe-to-toe with Sukuna in a domain battle and actually won the domain clashes multiple times. This man redefined what it means to be a special grade sorcerer. I have to give this category to Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer of the modern age. The 30 to 40 years range supposedly is the prime years for sorcerers, when experience meets peak physical condition. Yuki Tsukumo, at 30 years old, is a special grade sorcerer whose research into cursed energy nearly broke the entire system. Her Star Rage technique increases her mass to astronomical levels, allowing her to hit with devastating force. She went up against Kenjaku and pushed him to his absolute limits, forcing him to use multiple techniques and strategies just to survive. Her domain expansion wasn't shown, but the fact that she almost killed one of the most dangerous beings in the series speaks volumes, and I really like her curse technique a lot. We also have Yuta Hime, but she's more of a support-based sorcerer. She's not exactly the fighting type. Now let's talk about the 2 newly awakened sorcerers in Takaba and Higuruma. Fumihiko Takaba is 35, and this guy's curse technique is absolutely insane. His comedian technique literally warps reality based on what he finds funny, and he finds a lot of things funny. If Takaba thinks something is hilarious, it becomes real. He can create constructs, alter physics, and even make himself unkillable as long as he thinks it's funny. Takaba's fight with Kenjaku showcased just how broken this ability is. Higuruma Hiromi is no slouch either. For someone who just awakened his curse technique recently, he's an absolute monster. His domain expansion, Deadly Sentencing, is one of the most broken abilities in the series. It can literally strip away someone's curse technique as punishment, and if the verdict is the death penalty, he gets the Executioner's Sword that can bypass durability and one-shot nearly anyone. This guy went from 0 to being a threat to special grades in just a few weeks of having cursed energy. But you know what? Even with all these strong contenders, Yuki is definitely the strongest special grade here, and her feats against Kenjaku prove it. The woman literally tried to create a black black hole as a last resort to take him down. That's absolutely insane. So I'm giving this category to Yuki Tsukumo. In the 40 to 50 range, we actually have a pretty interesting situation, as Principal Yaga at 47 years old is the only one in this age range. Jujutsu Kaisen's story focuses heavily on the new generation and the ancient monsters, with not a lot in between, so by default, he wins it. We're skipping 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 80 to 90, and 90 to 100 ranges, as they don't really have any confirmed characters that we know of in Jujutsu Kaisen's canon. But don't worry, because the next categories are absolutely stacked with monsters. The 70 to 80 range has some solid picks, and when we get to the 100 plus and 1000 plus year old characters, that's where the real insanity begins. You're going to want to stick around for those. In the 70 to 80 age range, we have two confirmed characters, and they're both pretty interesting. Yoshinobu Gakuganji, at 76 years old, is the principal of Kyoto Jujutsu High, and despite his age, this old man can still throw down. Gakuganji's curse technique involves his guitar, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. He can create devastating sound-based attacks that can damage even special-grade curses. During the Goodwill event, we saw that Gakuganji is still capable in combat despite being in his 70s. He's survived decades in the Jujutsu world, which means he's both skilled and incredibly lucky. But there's another character in this age range who absolutely dominates Gakuganji, and that's Naobito Zenin at 71 years old. Now, Naobito is dead by the current timeline, killed by Jogo and Dagon during Shibuya, but at his peak, this man was considered the fastest sorcerer alive after Gojo Satoru, of course. Naobito's projection sorcery technique divides 1 second into 24 frames and allows him to trace predetermined movements at incredible speed. He can basically move in stop time as long as he follows the pre-traced path. This made him fast enough to blitz most opponents before they could even react. He was the head of the Zenin clan, one of the big 3 sorcerer families. So for the 70 to 80 age range, Naobito Zenin takes it. Stick until the end of the video, I've got a bonus character I want to tell you about, who's actually over 2,000 years old! Now for the characters over the age of 100. We're getting into the territory where things get really interesting. The Death Painting Wombs, Chozo, Kechizu, and Iso are all 150 years old. These guys are half-human, half-cursed spirit hybrids created by Kenjaku's experiments during the Meiji era. Chozo is by far the strongest of the 3, and his blood manipulation technique is refined to an incredible degree. Chozo can create piercing blood, a high-speed blood projectile that can pierce through reinforced defenses. His supernova creates a massive blood explosion. He can form blood armor for defense and blood wings for mobility. The guy is versatile, tactical, and powerful enough to fight special grade level threats. While Chozo is incredibly strong, he's not quite at the level of the absolute top tiers in this age range. The Heian era sorcerers that Kenjaku brought back for the culling game are also over 100 years old. These are sorcerers from the golden age of Jujutsu, when curse techniques were at their peak, and the strongest fought each other constantly. Ryu Ishigori, at 420 years old, is an absolute powerhouse. This guy has the highest cursed energy output in the entire culling game aside from Yuta with Rika, and possibly even higher than Yuta's base output. He fires massive beams of pure cursed energy that can obliterate anything in their path. Ryu's whole thing is that he's a glutton for battle. He wants to taste the ultimate dessert, the perfect fight that will satisfy his craving. He fought Yuta, Uro, and Kudorushi in a 4-way battle and held his own against all of them. But then we have Hajime Kashimo at 470 years old, and this is where things get really interesting. Kashimo is known as the God of Lightning, and his base curse technique during the culling game wasn't even his real technique. He was holding back, saving his real technique for a fight with Sukuna. But some fans think he's kind of a fraud. Kashimo's electrical cursed energy manipulation allowed him to mark targets and send guaranteed hit lightning strikes. He completely dominated Hikari in their fight, and only Hikari's jackpot pseudo-immortality kept him in the game. And don't forget Uro Takako, the former captain of the Sun, Moon, and Stars squad. And this woman is an absolute menace. Her sky manipulation technique is one of the most unique and broken abilities in the entire series. Uro can literally treat the sky as a tangible surface. She can grab it, rip it, fold it, and use it as a shield or weapon. Her technique is so versatile that it's almost impossible to fight against without understanding how it works. So who takes the over 100 age range? This is actually really close, but I think Kashimo edges out Ryu and Uro. Plus, he was confident enough to challenge Sukuna, which shows his mentality. Kashimo takes this category, but Ryu and Uro deserve massive respect. Now, you may not think many characters are over 1,000 years old in Jujutsu Kaisen, but there's actually a surprisingly large number of of them. Let's start with Tengen at 1,200 plus years old. Tengen has maintained their existence through the star plasma vessel mergers every 500 years. Tengen's barrier technique is the foundation of all barriers in Japan. Every single barrier that protects Jujutsu society, every veil, every domain, all of it is built upon Tengen's technique. Without Tengen, the entire Jujutsu system would collapse. However, Tengen isn't really a fighter. They're more of a support pillar whose importance lies in their barriers and knowledge, not their combat ability. Uruume, at 1,000 plus years old, is Sukuna's loyal chef and subordinate from the Heian era. Uruume's ice formation technique is incredibly powerful, capable of flash freezing entire areas and creating ice constructs. At 1,000 plus years old, Yorozu is another Heian-era sorcerer who is obsessed with Sukuna. Her construction technique is one of the most versatile in the series, allowing her to create anything she can imagine as long as she understands its structure. She showed us how good a technique construction is when used effectively, creating a perfect sphere, something that shouldn't exist in nature, and using it to attack Sukuna. But there's still another character, or should I say entity, that would obliterate all of them. Mahoraga, the divine general of the 10 Shadows, is also over 1,000 years old and is the ultimate Shikigami. This thing can adapt to any and all phenomena. Mahoraga's adaptation ability is so broken that it's literally unkillable through conventional means. Even Gojo recognized it as a serious threat. But now we get to the two biggest players in this age range. Kenjaku and Ryomen Sukuna are both over 1,000 years old. Kenjaku has been alive for over 1,000 years, jumping from body to body, collecting cursed techniques, and orchestrating plans that span centuries. And his sheer experience from living 1,000 years makes him nearly impossible to outsmart. But then there's Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curses. Over 1,000 years old, originally a human sorcerer who became so powerful that even after death, his fingers became cursed objects that couldn't be destroyed for a millennium. Sukuna defeated Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer of the modern age. His domain battles with Gojo, and his ability to adapt his strategy mid-fight, all of it showcased why he's called the king of curses. So who takes the 1,000 plus age range? Kenjaku is the mastermind, the planner, the one who's been orchestrating everything from the shadows. But in a straight fight, it has to be Ryomen Sukuna. But wait, before we end this video, there's one more character I need to mention, and this one is going to blow your mind. Dhruv Lakdawala is actually 2,000 plus years old and is the oldest known sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen's canon. But Yuta just one-tapped the dude, so he really isn't important.
Okay, we're so close to Gojo and Sukuna's perfect Devil Fruits reveal, so keep watching.
In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, there are many unique powers and abilities. Some characters rely mostly on their curse technique, others on physical strength, domain expansions, or even something else entirely. So in this video, I'll be going through each of the 9 power categories and picking the strongest character from each one. Let's start with one of the more straightforward categories, physical strength. In a series where guys are throwing buildings at each other and cracking the earth just by walking, this category is actually more competitive than you'd think. You've obviously got Yuji Itadori, who was shown early on doing things physically that no normal human, or even most sorcerers, should be capable of. You also have to give credit to characters like Choso and Aoi Todo. Both hit incredibly hard in their own right. And yeah, Sukuna in his prime Heian-era body was almost certainly monstrous in physical strength too. But here's the thing, when you strip away cursed energy and you just ask who hits the hardest with their own 2 hands, there is one name that stands completely alone, and that's Maki Zenin. After her transformation, Maki became something that, honestly, is absolutely terrifying. She has 0 cursed energy, and somehow that's exactly what makes her the most physically dominant character in the entire series. Maki alone dismantled the entire Zenin clan by herself. But that's not the reason why I picked her for this category. I know some of you might be saying Toji is physically stronger than her, but I disagree. Only because she went up against the strongest sorcerer in history and actually put up a fight, even tanking hits. While Toji is incredibly strong and probably could fight Sukuna for a while, he hasn't shown that, so Maki Zenin is the answer for physical strength. Now let's keep the momentum going, because this next category is one that I think people sleep on hard. Weapons users. Jujutsu Kaisen has some incredible fighters who rely almost entirely on their tools rather than some wild innate technique, and picking the best one is actually trickier than it sounds. Maki Maki obviously comes to mind again since we just talked about her. Her entire fighting style is weapon-based. Noritoshi Kamo, with his blood manipulation combined with bow and arrow techniques, is seriously nasty in the right circumstances. And the special grade cursed tools scattered across the series are dangerous enough in basically anyone's hands. We also have characters like Charles Bernard in the Culling game who uses a war staff to fight. But the strongest weapons user in Jujutsu Kaisen isn't even really debatable once you actually look at the full picture. It's Toji Fushiguro. Now you see why I didn't pick Toji for the strength category. Toji is essentially a normal human on paper, and yet he nearly killed Gojo Satoru and Geto Suguru at the same time. Also, killing the Star Plasma Vessel while she was being protected by two of the most talented young sorcerers of their generation and making it look easy is pretty impressive. But what makes Toji the best weapons user is his absurd ability to use his entire collection of cursed tools, most famously the inverted Spear of Heaven, to dismantle his opponents. In the fight against Gojo, he showed his ability to use different weapons to assist him, but that ability truly shines when he uses Playful Cloud. He absolutely destroyed Dagon with it, and what's funny is that it was all his body's muscle memory. Toji's body just knows exactly what to do with any weapon. He clearly deserves this category. Okay, so we've got Maki for physical strength and Toji for weapons. We still have domain expansion, cursed spirits, and much more. Reverse curse technique is one of the most fascinating abilities in the entire series because most sorcerers can't even use it. The concept is simple enough on paper. Instead of using negative energy to fuel attacks, you multiply two negatives together to create positive energy, which can then be used for healing. In practice, mastering it is so absurdly difficult that even grade 1 sorcerers often die from injuries that a reverse curse technique user could shrug off in seconds. The most obvious name here is Shoko, the only known sorcerer in the modern era who can consistently use reverse curse technique to heal other people. That's genuinely rare and incredibly valuable. Gojo himself uses it constantly. His 6 eyes allow him to use reverse curse technique so efficiently that he literally heals his brain in real time during fights to prevent mental fatigue, which is part of why Infinity doesn't break him down from the inside. But the winner for the strongest reverse curse technique user? It's kind of weird because it's someone who has no clue how to use it. Hikari Kinji, when his domain expansion hits a jackpot, is an absolute unit. When Hikari enters a window of roughly 4 minutes and 11 seconds, he generates an effectively infinite amount of positive energy. His reverse curse technique during jackpot essentially makes him unkillable for those 4 minutes. Although Hikari doesn't actually know how to use reverse curse technique, ironically, that's what makes him the best reverse curse technique user. Shikigami are one of the coolest parts of the Jujutsu Kaisen verse. But before we talk about the two most important Shikigami users, let's look at other users in the show, like Junpei and his jellyfish-like Shikigami. As a Shikigami on its own, Moondregs isn't really all that powerful. It can create and poison its enemies, but other than that, there wasn't really much versatility Junpei could show with the Shikigami. There's also Yuki with her Shikigami Garuda, probably one of the coolest displays of using a Shikigami in the entire series. Yuki was able to apply her curse technique of adding virtual mass onto the Shikigami, allowing her to attack opponents with devastating force, even using the Shikigami to counter Uraume's attacks. But we can't really give her this category as there are other sorcerers who used Shikigami even better than her. For instance, Megumi had many impressive ways in which he used his 10 Shadows technique, but unfortunately, he's up against these two characters who are absolutely ridiculous. Yuta and Sukuna both technically could be considered Shikigami users, as Rika became a Shikigami after Jujutsu Kaisen 0, and Sukuna straight up just used the 10 Shadows way better than Megumi ever could. But out of these Shikigami users, Sukuna is by far the best one. I mean, he did tame Mahoraga himself, and even used it to bypass Gojo's Infinity. We could see Sukuna's masterful use of Shikigami when his new A was literally twice the size of Megumi's. Sukuna was even able to incorporate piercing blood into the 10 Shadows technique by using water from the Shikigami Max Elephant instead of his own blood, which is just insane levels of brain power and ingenuity. Sorry, Megumi, Sukuna owns your technique and this category. Special grade cursed spirits are some of the most terrifying entities in fiction, and picking just one strongest is a genuinely difficult task. You have Hanami, who was designed almost purely for survival, and whose connection to nature gave Gojo himself a proper workout during Shibuya. And then there's Mahito. Mahito deserves a serious mention here. His technique of manipulating the shape of souls directly is arguably the most conceptually broken ability any cursed spirit has. Mahito is genuinely terrifying, and honestly, the case for him winning this category is strong. But the answer for the strongest cursed spirit is Jogo. And here's why. Jogo represents represents the absolute ceiling of raw cursed energy output and destructive firepower among the cursed spirits we actually see going all out. His maximum meteor brought a mountain down from the sky. His flames were so overwhelming that even Gojo, in the middle of their fight, acknowledged the scale of what he was dealing with. Jogo's cursed energy volume was described as comparable to 8 or 9 of Sukuna's fingers worth of power, which puts him in a class that even most sorcerers throughout history couldn't touch. What separates Jogo from Mahito in this category is their opponents. While Mahito fought Yuji and Nanami, Jogo fought both the strongest sorcerer of today and the strongest sorcerer of all time. Talk about bad luck. Mahito is close, but Jogo takes the crown for strongest cursed spirit in Jujutsu Kaisen. Cursed energy is the lifeblood of everything in Jujutsu combat. Your technique ceiling, your domain, all of it is dictated by how much cursed energy you have access to. And in this category, we have some enormous numbers to work with. Gojo Satoru's cursed energy reserves are described as vast even by special grade standards. Choso, being a death painting, has unusual and formidable cursed energy characteristics. Even Yuki Tsukumo, before her final fight, was acknowledged as having reserves that put her in extremely rare company. We also have Sukuna, who was stated to have the highest cursed energy reserves, but because he already won one category, I can't really make him the winner here. It'd be kind of boring. So the next best thing is to pick the second strongest sorcerer of the modern age, Yuta Okkotsu. When Yuta first appeared, the Jujutsu higher-ups evaluated him and noted that his cursed energy reserves were comparable to Gojo's. That alone puts him in a category above almost every other sorcerer in history. In Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Yuta's continued growth means this gap only widens further, with him storing so much cursed energy into his ring that it was able to basically be used for the merger plan Kenjaku had for centuries. He's been described as the one sorcerer in the current era who could potentially inherit Gojo's mantle as the strongest, and a huge part of that is simply the obscene amount of energy he has available to work with. The curse technique category is where I feel like most people's minds immediately go when they think about what makes JJK characters so powerful. And picking just one strongest is genuinely hard because this series has some of the most creative and broken techniques in anime. Hikari's idle death gamble is a shout. Sukuna's cleave and dismantle are absurdly versatile, and his flame arrow could destroy an entire city block. Kenjaku's ability to transplant his brain and steal other sorcerers' techniques means he's carrying potentially dozens of powerful abilities at once. Yuta can copy any technique, which is a broken ability that only gets more broken the more he fights. We also can't forget about Limitless. Born from the manipulation of space itself at the atomic level, Limitless has 3 primary stages: Infinity at its base, Blue, and Red, which is the reverse. And then there's Hollow Purple, the collision of Blue and Red. Gojo's technique is the definition of a perfect ability, and the reason the Jujutsu world needed to remove him from play before anything else could happen. But even he doesn't win the best cursed technique users, because Maru and Deborah from JJK Modulo both have probably one of the most broken curse techniques ever. With Deborah, he has a light-based curse technique. Basically, he can shoot light beams and move at the speed of light. Pretty cool, right? But even so, the true king of curse technique has to be Maru. The guy literally can do anything. Maru possesses a powerful, reality-altering innate technique split into 2 aspects: chaos and harmony. Controlled via his third eye, chaos allows him to distort natural laws. Harmony enables him to balance, locate, or synchronize targets. The guy is a frickin' unit. I wouldn't be surprised if he were able to defeat Gojo himself with such abilities. Okay, here's an interesting category. Curse technique reversal is what you get when a sorcerer applies positive energy created through reverse curse technique to their innate technique, flipping its fundamental output into something opposite. The most famous example in the main series is Gojo's Reversal Red, the reversal of Infinity's attraction into pure repulsion. There's also Kenjaku's reversal of Kaori Itadori's gravity technique, but nothing compares to this level of reversal technique. I already explained Deborah's innate curse technique, shooting light, which sounds straightforward until you apply curse technique reversal to it. When Deborah applies positive energy to his light technique, the output flips completely. We're talking about something that functions like a black hole. Deborah wasn't deeply explored in Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, so while we can't crown Deborah with complete certainty, given how much we don't know yet, we have to give him this category. A black hole is a pretty convincing argument if you ask me. And now we're here. The final category, domain expansion, the pinnacle of Jujutsu combat. Deploying a domain means guaranteeing your technique lands. Against most opponents, a domain is simply the end of the fight. Hikari's idle death gamble is the most creative domain in the series, a pachinko machine that rewards its user with pseudo-immortality on a jackpot. Mahito's self-embodiment of perfection is deeply unsettling. Given that his technique targets the soul, being trapped inside it is essentially a guaranteed death sentence for anyone without Yuji-specific resistance. But the strongest domain expansion in Jujutsu Kaisen belongs to Gojo's Unlimited Void. And here's what makes it the answer. Malevolent Shrine kills you through force, overwhelming physical and cursed energy output. Unlimited Void kills you through something that has no counter whatsoever. Information. Inside Unlimited Void, the target is bombarded with infinite simultaneous stimuli. Even a fraction of a second inside Unlimited Void leaves lasting neurological damage. During Shibuya, Gojo opened Unlimited Void against a crowd of transfigured humans, and the aftermath left survivors brain damaged for months. And he is definitely the strongest domain user. Have you ever wondered how strong would the strongest anime characters be if they had devil fruits? What would even be the perfect devil fruit for these characters? The Gum fruit, Dark fruit, or even the Fish fruit, Model Dragon? Well, that's what we're going to find out in this video. So let's begin with the first character on our list, Sukuna. Sukuna is one of those characters where giving him a strong fruit is easy, but giving him the perfect fruit is about matching how he fights. Sukuna is a highly skilled and crafty fighter. He uses his Shrine Curse technique to cleave and dismantle his opponents. He wins fights by being precise, cruel, and extremely cocky. So we need to find a devil fruit that not only matches his current abilities, but also enhances them. The obvious choice would be to just slap him with the strongest devil fruits in one piece, like Whitebeard's Tremor fruit. This devil fruit allows the user to create earthquakes and massive shockwaves that can destroy the entire world. So it does fit Sukuna's whole walking calamity theme. But the problem is, Sukuna's slash-based style is surgical and precise. The Tremor fruit is more suited for fighters who use brute force to overpower their opponents, just like how Whitebeard used the fruit to smash a Kainu's head to the ground or create literal tsunamis. It makes Sukuna stronger, yes, but it doesn't feel like Sukuna. It turns him into Big Destroyer Guy, which is why the perfect devil fruit for the King of Curses is Doflamingo's String fruit. First of all, it's literally a fruit of a king in one piece, the King of Dressrosa, so it already checks the box for a devil fruit worthy of the King of Curses. The String devil fruit allows the user to create and control razor-sharp, durable strings that can cut through anything, similar to Sukuna's Cleave and Dismantle. But what makes this fruit perfect for Sukuna? He can now control other people using the devil fruit, which matches Sukuna, who loves to humiliate others. Just imagine Sukuna fighting, let's say Jogo. He then stabs him with one of his strings and makes him attack the other disaster curses, while laughing manically. And the scariest part? Sukuna is a tactician. He'd puppet someone in a way that forces maximum emotional damage before the kill. And don't get me started on the devil fruit awakening. Doflamingo's awakening turned the environment into strings. So picture this. Sukuna steps into a city, and the streets become a giant execution web. Wherever you step, you could either get sliced by Cleave and Dismantle, or trapped in a razor-sharp web of strings. He would be so busted. Next up, Deku. Deku is one of the hardest characters to give a devil fruit to correctly, because on paper, he already has everything. Super strength, speed, multiple quirks stacked together. So the goal here isn't to make Deku even stronger than he already is. The goal is to fix his core flaw without breaking what makes him Deku. The obvious options would be any Logia devil fruit. Deku's biggest flaw is that he always fights so recklessly and takes insane damage, most of the time even breaking his body. A devil fruit that allows him to fight without getting hit because he's a Logia would make him ridiculously busted. Something like the Light fruit or Enel's devil fruit would make sense. But again, it overshadows One for All instead of supporting it. Deku stops being a hero who trained his body to hold power and becomes the guy who doesn't get hit. That misses the point of his character, which is why I think Marco's Bird fruit would be the perfect choice for Deku. The Bird fruit Model Phoenix is a mythical Zoan devil fruit that grants the user the ability to turn into a literal phoenix. But not only that, the flames the phoenix generates can heal the user. So this would fix Deku's core flaw. One for All overloads Deku's frame. The Phoenix fruit would give Deku enhanced endurance, faster recovery, not instant healing that would make him absurdly busted, but something sustainable that would match his character. This means Deku can actually grow into One for All naturally, instead of destroying himself every fight. The struggle remains, but it becomes manageable. Deku already fights like a mobile striker. Now give him true aerial ability that allows him to literally fly. He would be insanely strong, and he could use this ability along with Fajin and Black Whip to boost his speed and mobility. Seeing Deku rise into the sky, glowing with One for All energy, wings spread, that's an image straight out of a legend. Deku would obviously be way stronger with this fruit than without without it, becoming the ideal hero. Next up, Tanjiro, and we're giving him Buggy's Chop Chop Devil Fruit. This might sound wrong at first. A goofy devil fruit, used by a character who's literally a clown, given to one of the most pure-hearted protagonists in anime. But the more you think about it, the Bara Bara no Mi might actually be one of the most lethal fruits Tanjiro could ever eat. If we look at the devil fruit we could have given him, the Flame fruit. It might make sense at first with Tanjiro using sun breathing. Having actual flame abilities instead of special effects would make him really strong. But here's the issue. Tanjiro's strength doesn't come from overwhelming power. It comes from reading opponents, reacting to their movements, and surviving impossible situations using his grit and determination. Having a Logia devil fruit removes all of those character traits, basically removing any risk of death when Tanjiro fights demons, since they can't physically touch him. Another type of fruit we could give him is a Zoan type. That would improve his strength, durability, and speed. But Tanjiro already improves these naturally through training, and it would make him more like a demon rather than a demon slayer, which is why the Chop Chop fruit is perfect. The Bara Bara no Mi does one thing unbelievably well. It makes the user immune to cutting attacks by splitting the user's body into different parts. But it's not an overly broken ability that makes him immune to demon attacks, so he would have to use the fruit in creative ways, and he can always use his breathing styles like water and sun breathing to maximize his devil fruit. Moving on to a character who I found pretty hard to give a perfect devil fruit to, Denji. Denji is the protagonist of Chainsaw Man, who becomes the devil-human hybrid known as Chainsaw Man after his dog Pochita merges with him, allowing him to sprout chainsaws from his body by pulling a cord. He also has regeneration and super strength, so if we were to give Denji a devil fruit, it has to be something that refines his current abilities rather than adds on to them, which is why I think a Logia-type devil fruit would be perfect for him. Specifically, the forest fruit wielded by Admiral Green Bull. Since it's a Logia, Denji wouldn't need to face the pain of having chainsaws grow out of his body every time he transforms into the Chainsaw Devil. The devil fruit would also give Denji the power to drain nutrients, stamina, and life force from enemies, which I think would be a pretty useful ability in defeating devils. Now imagine Denji doing that mid-fight. He doesn't just heal himself from any injuries, he gets stronger the longer the fight goes on, which is terrifying. Denji also wouldn't need blood to fuel his transformation, as the forest fruit turns the environment into fuel. He would be an unstoppable killing machine. Next up, Satoru Gojo. Now we're hitting peak unfairness. Gojo is already way overpowered with his limitless and 6 eyes technique, so giving Gojo a devil fruit isn't about fixing a weakness. It's about seeing how far you can push absolute control over space before it becomes absurd. And no fruit in One Piece represents spatial dominance better than the 𝑴𝒂𝒆𝒄𝒐𝒎𝒆 no Mi. This fruit doesn't just suit Gojo, it feels like it was designed for him. Law's Room already functions like a mini domain. Now imagine Gojo stacking domain expansion, infinity, and room. That's fighting on 3 layers of spatial authority at once. Escape becomes conceptually impossible. With 𝑴𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒄, he can remove organs instantly, reposition enemies mid-attack, and disassemble cursed spirits without even trying. Even if someone could bypass infinity, they still have to deal with room. And let's just say I really would want to see Gojo saying, "Room, shambles." It would be so cool. Now we have Sung Jin Woo from Solo Leveling. I mean, with Jin Woo, it's practically pointless to give him a devil fruit that strengthens his weakness because, let's be frank, the guy has none. He can control an army of shadow soldiers that never die. He has near unlimited energy and is practically a god. But what we could do is give Jin Woo a power similar to his own. Sung Jin Woo starts his journey as prey and ends up as the absolute ruler of death. So if we're giving him a devil fruit, it can't just be strong. It has to match his final role. And the only power in One Piece that operates on that level of absolute authority is whatever Imu possesses. It might be cheating since Oda hasn't confirmed if Imu's powers are because of a devil fruit, but if it is, then it kind of fits Jin Woo's character perfectly. Just like Jin Woo, Imu can spawn shadowy entities. But what makes Imu's power different is that she can control humans too. They don't even need to be dead. So just imagine Jin Woo with that power on top of his monarch abilities. He'd be absolutely broken. He would be able to Domi Reversi other hunters, but in a good way to help him out in battle. Not that he needs it, but still. He would also be able to make his closest allies immortal and grant them infinite regeneration. I mean, that would be insane. Just imagine a Domi Reversi Thomas Andre with infinite regeneration. Yeah, I know, right? Pretty sick. Next up, Asta from Black Clover. Asta is the literal definition of never give up. He was born with 0 magic, but was still able to become one of the strongest characters in the entire show. Thanks to his anti-magic, of course. Asta wields 4 swords that each have a unique aspect to them. The first sword is the Demon Slayer sword. It can cut through magic, nullify effects like curses, and be enlarged or flown with. The Demon Dweller sword absorbs mana from others to release it as blasts or project allies' magic, enhancing teamwork. The Demon Destroyer sword can sever cause and effect, negating magical abilities and transformations. And finally, the Demon Slasher, a katana-like sword, also from Yami, that can slice through magic and create anti-magic slashes. Now, just imagine if Asta could wield all of these swords at the same time. Well, you don't have to anymore because the perfect devil fruit for Asta is undoubtedly the Flower fruit, used by Nico Robin. The Flower devil fruit allows the user to sprout copies of their body parts from any surface. So just imagine Asta using this devil fruit to sprout an extra 2 arms, allowing him to wield all 4 anti-magic swords. Next up, Eren Yeager. With Eren, it's pretty simple. Just give him a devil fruit that allows him to do the rumbling more efficiently. And lucky for him, I have just the right fruit. The Tremor fruit, or Gura no Mi, is a paramecia devil fruit wielded by both Whitebeard and Blackbeard. It gives the user the power to break the world itself, which is exactly what Eren chose to do. Eren doesn't need Titans to trample anymore. He can shatter nations from afar. Now we have Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto has never been about raw efficiency. He wins fights through creativity, adaptability, and refusing to stay down. So the perfect devil fruit for Naruto isn't something rigid or overly destructive. It needs to be flexible, just like him, which is why the Gomu no Mi, or the Hito no Mi model Nika, is the perfect fruit for him. This fruit rewards imagination, and Naruto has that in excess. We see Naruto use his shadow clones in many creative ways, so just imagine what he would do if he had this devil fruit. He would be able to use the Sun God form on all of his shadow clones. He would also be able to use his Rasengan in any range since his body can stretch, so anyone trying to stand at a distance is pretty much cooked. Moving on, we have Ichigo Kurosaki. We all know Ichigo to be an extremely fast character. That's always been his defining trait. From Shikai to Bankai to Holification, Ichigo's growth has never been about complex abilities. It's been about overwhelming his opponent before they can react. So the perfect devil fruit for Ichigo shouldn't replace that. It should tilt the speed equation so unfairly that fights are decided instantly. There are a few fruits in One Piece that are centered around speed, like the light fruit wielded by Kizaru. This feels like the obvious choice, but here's the issue. Kizaru's style of combat is ranged, and he never really fights in close combat, at least from what we've seen. Ichigo is a close-range executioner. He loves to get up close and personal, using his sword to slice his enemies. On top of that, he already has energy attacks like the Getsuga Tensho, so giving him the light fruit would be pretty redundant, which is why I believe the devil fruit for Ichigo should be Foxy's slow fruit. Just like the name suggests, the Noro no Mi slows down anyone hit by its beams to a literal standstill. This would be extremely useful for Ichigo in fights against extremely fast characters like Byakuya. Ichigo is already a speedster himself. Now just imagine his opponents moving at a fraction of their normal speed. Every Getsuga Tensho becomes unavoidable. We still have 7 strong characters to cover, and let's carry on with Makima from Chainsaw Man. Picking her devil fruit was pretty much a no-brainer. Makima loves to control and manipulate people, so when picking a devil fruit for Makima, it can't just be strong. It has to formalize what she already does naturally, and no fruit in One Piece does that better than the Soru no Mi. This fruit weaponizes fear, lifespan, and authority, which is literally Makima's entire character. The Soru no Mi allows the user to steal lifespan from those who fear them, so using this fruit would be so easy for her. She would turn fear into weapons and souls into tools. Big Mom's weakness is emotional instability. Makima has none. She is calm, controlled, and ideologically driven. That makes her the ideal Soru user. Next up, Kafka Hibino. Kafka is a walking contradiction. He's kind, self-doubting, almost gentle, and yet, when he transforms, he becomes absolute destruction. So the perfect devil fruit for Kafka isn't something subtle or tricky. It needs to externalize the monster he's trying to control. Zone-type devil fruits would be pretty pointless for Kafka. He basically is a zone himself. So I tried picking a devil fruit that would make Kafka a walking disaster. The Magu no Mi represents inevitable annihilation, and that's exactly how Kafka fights when he loses control. Kafka doesn't rely on finesse. He overpowers and overwhelms his opponents. Magma doesn't need precision. It's just a goo of pure destruction. Now stack that onto Kafka's already monstrous durability. You don't just struggle to hurt him. You can't even approach him. Next up, Light Yagami. With Light, we have to pick a devil fruit that would make his victory against L an absolute certainty, which is why the Glare fruit would be a game changer in the hands of Light. This fruit gives the user the power to see through things, like X-ray vision, read minds and memories, and project their sight over vast distances. It removes Light's only weakness, incomplete information. With the Jiro no Mi, Light can confirm identities with zero doubt, no aliases. Every name written is correct. Light no longer needs cameras, agents, or manipulation. He sees everything like a god. Now we have Goku from Dragon Ball. I mean, Goku, similar to Jinwoo, is already way too overpowered, so it was also really hard to fight a devil fruit that that would help him in any way. But then I thought, what if we gave Goku a zone-type devil fruit, specifically the Inu Inu no Mi? On the surface, giving Goku a dog devil fruit sounds insane, until you realize this fruit doesn't represent an animal. It represents instinct, and Goku is the purest embodiment of instinct in all of anime. The Inu Inu no Mi has multiple models. This devil fruit grants the power to transform into a hybrid and the full version of the Okuchi no Makami, a legendary wolf that, according to Kaido, is a guardian deity of Wano country. Moreover, as with other fruits of the mythical zone variety, this one blesses the user with at least one special ability. In particular, the user can generate and control ice, which they can expel as blasts from their mouth or otherwise make appear from their body, and can even use such ability without transforming. So just imagine Goku in this zone state while using Ultra Instinct and blasting ice beams through his mouth. Yeah, beyond broken, I tell you. Next up, Gon from Hunter x Hunter. Adult Gon is one of the most terrifying power-ups in anime history, but because it's suicidal, Gon doesn't unlock that form through mastery or growth. He forces his body into the version of himself that could defeat Pito, no matter the cost. So the real problem with Adult Gon has never been power, it's sustainability. And that's exactly why the Toshi Toshi no Mi is the perfect devil fruit for him. Let's be clear about what Adult Gon actually is. His nen didn't magically increase. His potential didn't suddenly appear. He aged his body forward to its absolute peak. Adult Gon is literally Gon's future self pulled into the present. Instead of a one-time nen vow that burns everything, the age fruit lets Gon freely age himself forward, access his peak physical state, and revert safely afterward. Adult Gon stops being a death sentence. It becomes a form he can access at any time. Originally, Gon sacrificed his nen to attain this form, but with the Toshi Toshi no Mi, Gon no longer needs to trade anything. He isn't borrowing power. He's becoming the version of himself that already exists in the timeline. Before we cover our last character, let's quickly go over 𝑴𝒂𝒆𝒄𝒐𝒆𝒄 from Dandadan. 𝑴𝒂𝒆𝒄𝒏 is the perfect candidate for a devil fruit that attacks the mind before the body, because unlike most shonen characters, he doesn't win by overpowering people. He wins by pushing forward despite being afraid. So giving him a fruit that weaponizes mental states is disturbingly perfect. Perona's fruit creates ghosts that induce extreme negativity, loss of will, and instant emotional collapse. For most characters, this is broken. For 𝑴𝒂𝒆𝒄𝒏, it's poetic. And since Dandadan is all about spirits, yokai, and aliens, this fruit literally fits perfectly into the verse. And lastly, we have Saitama from One Punch Man. This one is tricky, because Saitama's entire character is a joke built on absolute overkill. So the goal here is not to make Saitama stronger in a way that breaks the joke. The goal is to give him a devil fruit that doesn't replace his strength, doesn't add complexity, but somehow makes his existence even more absurd. And that's why the Bomu Bomu no Mi is perfect. The Bomu Bomu no Mi lets the user make any part of their body explode, which would be hilarious in Saitama's hands. He still ends fights in one move. The fruit just means his casual movements explode now. A serious punch already obliterates enemies. Now imagine a normal punch plus a point-blank explosion triggered accidentally. I can just imagine Saitama's face after doing this. Imagine Saitama randomly sneezing and boom, blows up an entire supermarket. That would be so hilarious. Click on this video if you want to know what would happen if Tanjiro was raised by all 9 Hashira at the same time. Come on, click it!